The internet has a peculiar relationship with The Simpsons. What began as a short series of animated sketches on The Tracey Ullman Show in 1987 has grown into the longest-running American animated series in television history, with more than 790 episodes spanning over 3 decades. The Simpsons transcended its status as mere entertainment and became something far stranger in the collective imagination of the digital age. A prophetic oracle, a crystal ball hidden in plain sight, and according to some of the more elaborate theories circulating in the darker corners of the internet, evidence of time travel. The conspiracy theory that The Simpsons creator Matt Groening is a time traveler has percolated through social media platforms, YouTube channels, and internet forums for years. It sits alongside related theories that the show's writers are members of secret societies like the Illuminati or Freemasons, that they possess access to classified government intelligence, or that they have somehow cracked the code of predictive programming, deliberately seeding their episodes with foreknowledge of events yet to come. These theories range from playful speculation to deadly serious conviction, and they have attracted millions of believers who point to a growing catalogue of apparent predictions as proof that something unexplainable is happening in the animated town of Springfield. This is the story of how those theories came to be, what evidence supposedly supports them, and what the truth actually reveals about coincidence, mathematics, human psychology, and the nature of satire itself. The modern legend of Simpsons predictions truly exploded into mainstream consciousness on November 8, 2016, when Donald John Trump was elected the 45th president of the UK state. Within hours of the election being called, social media platforms were flooded with references to a 16-year-old episode of The Simpsons called Bart to the Future, which had originally aired on March 19, 2000. In the episode, Bart Simpson is shown a vision of his future at a Native American casino, and viewers discover that his sister Lisa has become the President of the United States. During a scene in the Oval Office, President Lisa Simpson utters a line that would echo across time. "As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump." The line had been a throwaway joke in 2000, a reference to Trump's short-lived exploration of a presidential run as a Reform Party candidate in 1990. But in the wake of his actual election, it took on an almost supernatural quality. Viral images spread across the internet showing side-by-side comparisons of the animated episode and real-world footage of Trump, including a scene that appeared to show both versions of Trump descending an escalator while waving to supporters. Here was visual evidence, believers argued, that the show had depicted not just the general concept of the Trump presidency, but the specific manner of his campaign announcement. How could anyone explain such precision unless the writers had somehow witnessed the future? The answer, it turned out, was that they could not have explained it, because the escalator scene did not come from the 2000 episode at all. Fact-checking website Snopes investigated and discovered that the escalator footage was from a 2015 YouTube short called Trumptastic Voyage, produced by the Simpsons team after Trump had already announced his candidacy in the exact manner depicted. The viral images juxtaposing the 2000 episode with Trump's real campaign were essentially comparing apples to oranges, one from a genuine 16-year-old prediction and one from a contemporary parody. The internet had conflated the two into a single, more impressive-seeming prophecy. This discovery would become emblematic of a larger pattern. The Simpsons prediction phenomenon is built partly on genuine coincidences, partly on educated guesses by savvy writers, and partly on outright fabrication and misattribution by internet users eager to believe in something extraordinary. Yet the exposure of the escalator hoax did little to diminish enthusiasm for the time travel theory. If anything, the broader idea that The Simpsons could see the future only grew stronger as more apparent predictions came to light, and some of these predictions were genuinely difficult to explain away. Consider the 1998 episode When You Dish Upon a Star, which included a brief shot of the 20th Century Fox studio lot with a sign reading a division of Walt Disney Co. At the time, the idea of Disney owning Fox was played purely as an absurdist joke, a comment on the entertainment industry's tendency toward consolidation. But on December 14, 2017, Disney announced that it was acquiring 21st Century Fox for $52.4 billion, bringing The Simpsons itself under the Disney umbrella. The joke had become reality almost 2 decades later. Or consider the 2014 episode You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee, in which Homer Simpson is approached by an official from the World Football Federation, a thinly veiled stand-in for FIFA. The episode depicted FIFA as thoroughly corrupt, with officials accepting bribes and one executive being arrested mid-scene for his criminal activities. The episode also predicted that Germany would defeat Brazil in the World Cup. Just over a year later, in May 2015, Swiss authorities arrested 7 FIFA officials on corruption charges. Germany had indeed won the 2014 World Cup, defeating Brazil 7-1 in the most shocking results in tournament history. The accumulation of such coincidences created fertile ground for conspiracy thinking. On platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and X, formerly Twitter, creators began compiling ever longer lists of Simpsons predictions, each entry seemingly more improbable than the last. The show, they claimed, had predicted smartwatches in 1995, video calling in 1995, the Siegfried and Roy tiger attack in 1993, the horse meat scandal of 2013, the 2018 US Olympic curling gold medal, Lady Gaga's Super Bowl halftime performance, the discovery of the Higgs boson particle, and dozens of other events. How could mere coincidence explain such a track record? For those inclined toward the supernatural, the answer was that it could not. And so the time travel theory took shape. The theory posits that Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, is either a time traveler himself or has access to time travelers who provide him with information about future events. Variations of the theory suggest that the show's entire writing staff might be time travelers, or that Groening is receiving intelligence from secret government programs with knowledge of what is to come. Some believers point to Groening's subsequent creation, Futurama, which debuted in 1990 and is set 1,000 years in the future, as evidence of his temporal obsessions. If Groening created a show about the future, the thinking goes perhaps he has actually visited it. The Freemason theory offers a parallel explanation. According to this version of events, Groening is a member of secret societies that possess occult knowledge of future events, possibly through ancient mystical practices or access to suppressed technologies. The show's predictions are not coincidences, but deliberate insertions, coded messages to those who know how to read them. This theory draws on the broader discourse of predictive programming, a concept popular in conspiracy circles that suggests mass media is used to mentally condition populations for coming events, making them more accepting of changes that might otherwise cause resistance. A related theory suggests Groening has connections to intelligence agencies, with some social media posts in 2024 claiming, without evidence, that he is a former CIA agent. The theory holds that the CIA or other agencies feed him classified intelligence about planned events, which he then incorporates into episodes. This would explain, believers argue, why the show seems to have foreknowledge of political developments, technological innovations, and even terrorist attacks. The most commonly cited evidence for these theories, beyond the predictions themselves, is the sheer volume and specificity of the apparent foreknowledge. A typical internet listicle will cite anywhere from 17 to 55 Simpsons predictions that allegedly came true. When presented together, the collection creates an overwhelming impression of prophetic power that seems to defy rational explanation. But what do the people who actually make The Simpsons have to say about these theories? Al Jen has been writing for The Simpsons since its very first season and has served as the show's showrunner since 1998, making him the longest-serving creative leader in the show's history. In numerous interviews over the years, Gene has offered a consistent and decidedly unmagical explanation for the prediction phenomenon. Educated guessing combined with statistical probability. Speaking to MIT Technology Review in 2025, Gene was characteristically blunt about the time travel and conspiracy theories. When asked about claims that the writers are all Ivy League-educated insiders with special knowledge, he dismissed the notion as preposterous stuff that people say. He emphasized that most of the show's apparent predictions have logical explanations rooted in the cultural moment when the episodes were written. The Trump prediction is a perfect example. Jean explained that in the year 2000, when the episode aired, Trump was actively talking about running for president as a Reform Party candidate. The joke was not pulled from thin air. It was a satirical extension of something Trump was actually doing at the time. The original pitch for the line, Gene revealed, had actually been Johnny Depp, but the writers decided Trump was funnier. The reason Trump seemed like a plausible punchline was precisely because he had already demonstrated political ambitions that struck the writers as absurd. Gene has characterized the predictions as educated guesses, noting that if you throw enough darts, you're going to get some bullseyes. The Simpsons has produced hundreds of episodes over more than 3 decades, each containing numerous jokes, background, gags, and storylines. With such a vast sample size, some coincidences are statistically inevitable. Producer Bill Oakley, who oversaw many of the show's most celebrated seasons, has been even more dismissive of the prediction mythology. There are very few cases where The Simpsons predicted something. Oakley has stated, "It's mainly just coincidence because the episodes are so old that history repeats itself." Oakley's point highlights a crucial aspect of the phenomenon that believers often overlook. Satire, by its very nature, extrapolates from present trends to their logical or illogical extremes. When The Simpsons joked in 1998 that Disney might someday own Fox, it was commenting on a consolidation trend that was already well underway. Disney had acquired Capsities/ABC just a few years earlier, and the entertainment industry was clearly moving towards fewer and larger conglomerates. The joke was funny precisely because it extended a real trend to an absurd-seeming conclusion. That the conclusion eventually became reality says less about the show's prophetic powers than about the predictability of corporate behavior. The mathematical reality underlying the Simpsons prediction phenomenon can be understood through a concept known as the law of truly large numbers, a principle articulated by Harvard statisticians Percy Diaconis and Frederick Mosteller in their 1980 paper Methods for Studying Coincidences. The law states simply that with a large enough sample, any outrageous thing is likely to happen. In a population of hundreds of millions of people, 1,000,000-to-1 odds occur constantly. Skeptic and magician Penn Jillette has expressed this principle more colloquially. 1,000,000-to-1 odds happen 8 times a day in New York City. Applied to The Simpsons, the law suggests that with over 790 episodes, each containing dozens of jokes and visual gags, some storylines are bound to intersect with future events purely by chance. The question is not whether any predictions will come true, but how many. And here, the believers' methodology falls apart, because they count only the hits while ignoring the misses. When Gene was asked about this cherry-picking problem by MIT Technology Review, he responded directly, "It's cherry-picking. There are 35 years of material. How many of the things that we said came true versus how many of the many things we said did not come true?" The list of failed Simpsons predictions is indeed long, though it receives far less attention than the apparent successes. The show predicted that Big Ben's analog clock would be replaced with a digital display by 2010. It has not happened. The show predicted that Fox would begin broadcasting pornography. It has not. The show predicted that Lisa Simpson would become the first female president of the United States. As of this writing, no woman has yet held the office. The show predicted colonies on Mars, holographic mail delivery, and robot librarians by various future dates that have come and gone without these developments materializing. These failures are not catalogued and shared virally the way the successes are, because failures do not fit the narrative of prophetic power. This asymmetry is a textbook example of confirmation bias, the psychological tendency to notice, remember, and emphasize information that confirms existing beliefs, while ignoring or dismissing information that contradicts them. The role of confirmation bias in fueling The Simpsons' time travel theory cannot be overstated. Human beings are pattern-seeking creatures, and we are particularly inclined to find meaning in coincidences. Psychologists call this tendency apophenia, the experience of seeing patterns or connections in random or meaningless information. It is why we see faces in clouds, why we find significance in repeated numbers, and why we become convinced that a television show predicted the future when some of its jokes happen to align with subsequent events. The predictions themselves are often far less specific than believers claim. The so-called 9/11's prediction is a prime example. In the 1997 episode, The City of New York vs. the by Doublehay. Homer Simpson. Lisa holds up a brochure advertising bus service to New York for $9. The Twin Towers appear in the background of the image, and because the $9 is positioned next to the towers, some viewers have claimed the image reads as 9/11's. Believers argue this proves the show's creators knew about the terrorist attacks 4 years before they occurred, but examine the claim closely and it falls apart. The brochure was created as a joke about comically cheap travel options. The price of $9 was chosen specifically because it was an absurdly low fare. The artist who designed the brochure logically included the iconic Twin Towers in a silhouette of the New York skyline because they were the city's most recognizable landmarks. There is no date on the brochure, no reference to airplanes or terrorism, nothing that specifically links the image to the events of September 11th, 2001. The 9/11 inches reading requires squinting at the image and deciding that the towers somehow represent the number 11. Bill Oakley, who produced the episode, has addressed this theory directly. $9 was picked as a comically cheap fare, he explained. To make an ad for it, the artist logically chose to include a silhouette of NYC. I signed off on the design. It's pretty self-explanatory, and I will grant that it's eerie given that it's on the only episode of any series ever that had an entire act of World Trade Center jokes. Oakley's acknowledgement that the coincidence is eerie represents the most honest assessment of the situation. Yes, the image is strange to look at with the benefit of hindsight. No, it is not evidence of foreknowledge. The two things can both be true. Al Jean has also addressed the 9/11's claim, calling it completely bizarre and strange, but emphasizing that it was a coincidence. In the World Trade Center episode, there was a brochure reading $9 a day, with an 11 styled up like the towers. That was in 1996, which was crazy, like this insane coincidence. But mostly it's just educated guesses. The 9/11's claim is particularly instructive because it demonstrates how the meaning of an image can change depending on when it is viewed. Before September 11th, 2001, the brochure was simply a funny sight gag about cheap travel. After the attacks, it became something sinister in the minds of those looking for hidden meanings. The image did not change, only the context of viewing changed. This is how coincidences work. They feel significant in retrospect, even when they were meaningless at the time. But the fake prediction problem extends far beyond misinterpreted real episodes. A significant portion of The Simpsons' prediction mythology consists of outright fabrications, images that were doctored, clips that were spliced together, or scenes that never aired at all. The problem exploded into public view in March 2024 when the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore collapsed after being struck by a cargo ship. Within hours, images began circulating on social media purporting to show that The Simpsons had predicted this exact event. The images showed Homer and Lisa Simpson watching from a boat as a cargo ship collided with a bridge. The post by the X account at No Context Humans received over 29 million views and 179,000 likes before fact-checkers could respond. But the image was entirely fabricated. Snopes and other verification services ran reverse image searches and found no evidence of the image anywhere on the internet before the bridge collapse. Analysis revealed telltale signs of AI generation. Lisa Simpson's hair had 10 spikes instead of the character's standard 8. Homer had an extra hair spike, and his facial proportions were subtly wrong. The boats in the water did not make visual sense, and some figures lacked pupils. Matt Selman, an executive producer and showrunner for The Simpsons, who has been writing for the show since 1997, addressed the fake directly on X. Sadly, The Simpsons' predictions are now meaningless, he wrote. People so desperately want to believe in the show's magic powers, or are just very lazy, that they ignore that obviously fake images of the so-called predictions cannot be traced to any actual episode, like this nonsense. Someone later noted sarcastically that the image showed Homer, famous for his love of coffee, a reference to the coffee cup visible in the fake image, something inconsistent with Homer's well-established preference for beer. The Baltimore Bridge hoax was not an isolated incident. Similar fabrications had previously circulated claiming The Simpsons predicted the 2019 Notre Dame Cathedral fire. A real 2007 episode had been doctored to add flames. The 2020 Beirut explosion. Two unrelated explosion scenes were spliced together. And the 2023 Titan submersible disaster. A submarine episode was falsely claimed to depict the event. Each time a major news event occurs, fake Simpsons prediction images appear within hours, manufactured by people seeking viral attention, or by those so committed to the time travel narrative that they are willing to create false evidence to support it. Gene addressed this phenomenon in his MIT Technology Review interview. There's also a thing people do that we don't really love, which is they fake predictions. So after something happens, they'll concoct a Simpsons frame, and it's not something that ever aired. It shows you how you can really convince people of something that's not the case. Our small denial doesn't get as much attention. This last observation is crucial. The corrections never travel as far as the original claims. A fake prediction image can accumulate millions of views before being debunked, but the debunking itself might be seen by only a tiny fraction of those who saw the original. The mythology thus grows continuously, fed by an endless stream of new fake evidence that is never fully refuted in the public consciousness. The rise of artificial intelligence image generation has only accelerated this problem. Tools like DALL-E, Midjourney, and Stable Diffusion make it trivially easy to create convincing Simpsons-style images. Every future disaster, political event, or cultural moment can now be retroactively predicted by The Simpsons through the simple act of typing a prompt into an AI interface. The barrier to creating fake evidence has dropped to near zero, while the sophistication of that evidence continues to improve. Yet even setting aside the fakes and the misattributions, even focusing only on the genuine coincidences, there remains a more fundamental question. Why does this show, of all shows, seem to have such an unusual track record? The answer lies in the remarkable intellectual pedigree of The Simpsons writing staff and the particular approach to comedy that has defined the show since its inception. Simon Singh, a physicist, journalist and author who earned his doctorate at the University of Cambridge and worked at CERN, became fascinated by the mathematical sophistication hidden within The Simpsons. His 2013 book, The Simpsons and Their Mathematical Secrets, documents the extensive scientific and mathematical education of the show's writers and explains how they have embedded genuine equations, theorems, and scientific references throughout the series' run. The numbers are striking. Al Jan, who has overseen more Simpsons episodes than anyone, graduated from Harvard University at age 16 with a degree in mathematics. Mike Rice, one of the show's original writers and a longtime collaborator of Gene's, competed on the Connecticut State math team as a teenager. David X. Cohen, who wrote for The Simpsons from 1994 to 1999 before leaving to co-create Futurama with Groening, graduated magna cum laude from Harvard with a bachelor's degree in physics and earned a master's degree in computer science from UC Berkeley. He published academic papers on mathematical topics, including one on the problem of sorting burnt pancakes. Ken Keeler has a PhD in applied mathematics from Harvard and worked at AT&T Bell Laboratories before joining The Simpsons, and later Futurama. In one famous example of his mathematical dedication, Keeler invented an entirely new mathematical theorem simply to resolve a plot point in a Futurama episode. Jeff Westbrook majored in physics and the history of science at Harvard, earned his PhD in computer science from Princeton, and served as an associate professor at Yale University before leaving academia to write comedy. Bill Odenkirk has a PhD in inorganic chemistry from the University of Chicago. The list goes on. J. Stuart Burns has a bachelor's degree in mathematics from Harvard and a master's in math from Berkeley. Matt Warburton holds a degree in cognitive neuroscience from Harvard. The writing room of The Simpsons, particularly during its celebrated golden age of the 1990s, was staffed to an unusual degree by people with serious training in mathematics, physics, computer science, and other scientific fields. As Singh noted in interviews about his book, when you have writers with this level of intellectual firepower, hidden jokes and references become inevitable. These writers understand probability, they understand technological trends. When they extrapolate from present reality to create satirical futures, their extrapolations tend to be grounded in actual principles rather than pure fantasy. The Higgs boson prediction is a perfect illustration. In the 1998 episode, The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace, Homer Simpson becomes obsessed with invention and is shown scribbling equations on a chalkboard. One of those equations, if calculated, yields a value for the mass of the Higgs boson particle that is remarkably close to what scientists at CERN would eventually measure when they discovered the particle in 2012, 14 years later. This sounds like prophecy until you understand the context. The equation was written into the script by David X. Cohen, who holds degrees in physics and computer science. Cohen contacted actual physicists to get plausible-looking equations for the scene, and the Higgs boson equation represented a reasonable theoretical estimate that scientists had already proposed. The mass value Homer scribbled was not pulled from the future, it was pulled from the existing scientific literature. When the actual particle was discovered and its mass measured, the measurement happened to be close to what physicists had already hypothesized. Cohen's equation was an educated guess informed by real science, not a supernatural vision. This pattern explains many of the show's most celebrated predictions. The smartwatch in the 1995 episode Lisa's Wedding was not a vision of the Apple Watch. It was a comedic extension of decades of science fiction, from Dick Tracy's radio watch in 1946 to James Bond's watch gadgets in the 1970s. Video calling in the same episode was similarly not a prediction, but a staple of futuristic fiction that the writers simply included in their depiction of 2010. The autocorrect joke in 1994 was a commentary on the Apple Newton, a real device that existed at the time and was notorious for its terrible handwriting recognition. Microsoft Word had autocorrect features by 1993, a year before the episode aired. The writers were not predicting the future. They were paying close attention to the present and pushing its trends toward logical comedic conclusions. That reality sometimes caught up to their jokes says more about the predictability of technological and social development than about any paranormal abilities. Al Jean addressed the psychology behind people's desire to believe in the predictions during his MIT Technology Review interview. Maybe it slightly satisfies a yearning people have for meaning, he suggested, certainly when life is now so random. This observation cuts to the heart of the time travel theory's appeal. We live in an era of profound uncertainty, where events that shape our lives often seem to come from nowhere. Pandemics, political upheavals, economic crises, technological disruptions. The idea that someone somewhere knew what was coming offers a strange kind of comfort. If The Simpsons predicted Trump's presidency, then Trump's presidency was somehow foreordained, part of a pattern we might learn to read if only we paid enough attention. If the show predicted 9/11s, then even the most senseless tragedy had meaning hidden within it. The alternative, which is that life is genuinely random and unpredictable, that we are all stumbling through history without a map, is far more terrifying. Conspiracy theories, including the Simpsons time travel theory, provide the illusion of order in a chaotic world. They transform meaningless coincidence into significant prophecy, random chance into cosmic design. The writers of The Simpsons are not clairvoyant wizards gazing into crystal balls, and they are certainly not time travelers. They are smart, observant people who have spent decades commenting on American society through the lens of satire. Their predictions come true not because they can see the future, but because they understand the present so well that they can identify where it is likely to go. William Irwin, a philosophy professor at King's College in Pennsylvania, who wrote The Simpsons and Philosophy, has taught the show at the University of California, Berkeley, and other institutions. He summarized the situation simply. The show is the product of brilliant minds, many Harvard-educated. The result is a show packed with references to art, literature, pop culture, politics, and science. When that many smart people produce a television show, it's bound to make some startling predictions. The proliferation of fake Simpsons predictions in recent years has begun to undermine even the genuine mystique the show once enjoyed. As Selman noted in his frustrated social media posts, the predictions are now becoming meaningless because every major event is immediately followed by fabricated evidence of foreknowledge. The time travel theory has become a self-perpetuating machine that no longer requires actual input from the show itself. This represents a strange kind of victory for the skeptical perspective. The theory has grown so large and so indiscriminate that it has consumed its own credibility. When everything is predicted, nothing is predicted. When every disaster and every development comes with immediate fake evidence of Simpsons' foreknowledge, the genuine coincidences lose their power to surprise. Yet the conspiracy will persist. It persists because it serves psychological needs that have nothing to do with The Simpsons specifically. The show is merely a convenient vessel for a much older human impulse, the desire to believe that someone understands what is happening, that the chaos of existence has hidden order, that the future is knowable to those with special sight. Matt Groening is not a time traveler. He is a cartoonist from Portland, Oregon, who attended the Evergreen State College and drew comics for alternative newspapers before creating one of the most influential television shows in history. His biography is extensively documented. His creative process has been examined in countless interviews and profiles, and his work has been analyzed by scholars for decades. There is no mystery about who he is or how he does what he does. The Simpsons predicts the future in the same way that all good satire predicts the future, by holding a funhouse mirror up to the present and showing us where our current trajectories might lead. Sometimes those trajectories continue as expected, and the satirical exaggeration becomes reality. Other times they do not, and the prediction joins the vast catalogue of missed guesses that nobody bothers to compile. The truth about Simpsons' time travel theories is that they reveal far more about human psychology than about the show itself. They reveal our hunger for meaning in a meaningless universe, our susceptibility to confirmation bias, our willingness to embrace fantastic explanations when mundane ones would suffice, and our vulnerability to fabricated evidence in an age of digital manipulation. They reveal, in short, exactly the kind of human foibles that The Simpsons has spent 36 years satirizing. Perhaps that is the greatest irony of all. A show devoted to exposing human foolishness has become the subject of one of the most elaborate collective foolishnesses of the internet age. If Matt Groening really were a time traveler, he might have predicted that too. The Simpsons will continue to produce episodes, and some of those episodes will contain jokes that, years or decades later, will seem to align with real events. When they do, the internet will react with astonishment, the lists of predictions will grow longer, and the time travel theory will gain new adherents. And the writers will continue to do what they have always done: watch the world closely, think carefully about where it might be headed, and make jokes about what they see. If you throw enough darts, Al Jean has said, you're going to get some bullseyes. It is not the most romantic explanation for the phenomenon. It does not satisfy our longing for mystery or our hope that someone, somewhere, understands the plan. But it has the considerable virtue of being true. The animated yellow family from Springfield is not our oracle. They are our mirror, reflecting back the absurdities of our present so clearly that we sometimes mistake their satire for prophecy. The mistake is understandable. After all, in a world where a reality television star can become president, where corporations grow to swallow everything in their path, where tigers eventually turn on their trainers and executives are arrested for corruption, who can say any more what is satirical exaggeration and what is simply the evening news? The Simpsons did not predict our future. They described our present so accurately that we failed to notice when the present caught up with their jokes. That is not time travel. That is just very, very good writing.